And hello, people. As people are coming in here, I wanted to welcome you to another virtual session for Fountain Valley School. This one is all about applying to boarding and private schools. So that can obviously be Fountain Valley. It can be other schools, it can be multiple, but we're going to go over 10 tips and tricks. We have some people joining us that we will introduce in a second. But first, let me introduce myself. So if you've been on one of the previous webinars, you already know who I am. If not, I'm Alex Winokur. I'm the Director of Enrollment Operations here at Fountain Valley School. I've been here just over a year, but the people who are all with me have been here much longer. So they're going to be able to talk much more robustly about our process, what we do, and all the good tips and tricks that you want to do. So here is how tonight is going to work. We are going to do the top 10 tips for applying to a private and boarding school. So we're going to overview some of the physical admissions processes, talk about things like essays, interviews, do you have to do transcripts? How do you pick a school? How do you prep? How do you help your child prep? Some of you on this webinar, you might be prospective students or you might be the parents. So we're going to kind of go through all of that with you. And then obviously, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A or put them in the chat. We'll either come to them in real time or we'll come back to them at the end. So we'll try to leave a little bit of time. But considering we have 10 tips, maybe a bonus one, and then plus some other stuff, and we have a lot to cover, I want to jump right into this. So first of all, as you look at this screen about the start early, apply early action, I do want to acknowledge the people that we have here with us. So with us, we have Ms. Kira Walsh. She is one of our assistant admissions directors at Fountain Valley School. She is also an alum of Fountain Valley. We have Ms. Allison Christofferson, who currently has 2 children at Fountain Valley School and has gone through this process very recently and is also an alum of the school. And then we have Mr. Burton McLucas, who has a daughter at the school, just went through this again not too long ago, and is also an alum of the school. So they're going to be able to talk about this from several different angles about their parents, their process that they went through, maybe their kids' process when they went through, kind of what they were going through as parents, what their students went through. So it'll be some good insight. So our first tip, and I'm going to take the first tip here, is start early and apply early action. If your school, like Fountain Valley, has an early action process, that's really important to kind of jump in on that, because that is going to be the best chance your student has and your family has of getting through the process, possibly getting admitted, getting all the information you need, getting through everything that there is. And, some of you already know, and this is our process at Fountain Valley, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's definitely a lot of stuff going on. So, you might want to plan a visit. Even before you do that, you have to do research. So if it is a specific school, you're going to do your research on that. You're going to go online. You're going to look at things. You're going to look at reviews, everything we're going to go over. Then you want to visit the campus. Then you have to start applying. There's interviews. There's other things you need to do. There might be student essays. There might be parent essays. There might be a parent interview. You have to have recommendations. You have to have transcripts. All this can be really overwhelming. Depending on the school or the process, your student might have to take a standardized test like the SSAT, pre-ACT, might have to take a PSAT. International students, TOEFL, Duolingo. I'm throwing a lot of things out and a lot of acronyms out, but taking this all together, it can take time. It can be a little bit stressful. We totally get that. We totally understand that. From an admission standpoint, especially at Fountain Valley, we try to make it as easy as possible and as pain-free as possible, but there's just a lot of steps and a lot of things. So one of the things you really want to do is start early. That way you'll have a lot of time to do it. Think about it. If you are just coming into Thanksgiving break, just going into a winter break, why not get everything done and in? Don't wait until the last second. This is also something good to teach your students, obviously, and teach your children. I would think you want to, is get in there early. So that's tip number one, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. For tip number two, I'm going to hand it off to Kira.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. So our second tip is to seek advice, and we consider our current parents as a great resource for this. So current parents can offer insight and advice into navigating the application process. They can also provide reassurance. They can help explain the school's culture and answer any questions about our community life from the parent perspective and the student perspective. And of course, they can offer firsthand relatable insight into being an FVS parent and all of the ins and outs of applying. So I'm going to give the spotlight over to our current parents and ask, what was the most helpful resource or piece of advice that you received when applying to private schools?
I'll go ahead and go first. One of the great pieces of advice that I have passed on and I received is really having spending time at the school while the school is actually in session. One of the things that I think really helped a lot with uh, my daughter's selection of Fountain Valley was the fact that we scheduled a time for her to basically shadow some students and spend basically the academic day with them so she could actually understand and see and experience what a day in the life of Fountain Valley was really like. I think that's one of the biggest tips that I would give to people because it was very helpful for her to understand and see and feel comfortable and see what she liked and didn't like.
I would say if I could offer one piece of advice or advice that I received that I would pass on to others, it would be as much as possible having your child own the process. And as an adult, you can manage the information, you can manage the schedule, but when it comes to the actual answering the essay questions or checking the boxes, it was important to me that my child like owned this and wanted this because I do think that, you were talking about paying a lot of money for your child's potential education, and you want them to be really invested in the process because I think, teenagers just are so much more likely to invest and own it if they have chosen it for themselves. So that would be my advice, is as much as possible, letting your kiddo own the process.
And from my perspective, from being a director of enrollment operations and, having seen this before, one of my biggest pieces of advice is to definitely look on different review sites and definitely delve deep into websites and things, but take all of the reviews kind of with a grain of salt. There's going to be really good ones, there's going to be bad ones, there's going to be happy people, there's going to be angry people, no matter where you look. So you can't just take one thing and say, oh, that's the be all end all. So that's my personal piece, is look at different items and look at, kind of different platforms, which brings me to my next point, which is that schools have different application platforms. So, depending on where you're applying, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do it. Now we've come a long way from the, pencil paper. We have paper applications. I'm pretty sure nobody has those anymore, but I guess it's a possibility that there's still paper apps out there somewhere. But now we have a whole bunch of things that you can utilize, and some just like college. So think about this like the college process. Some of them are common apps and some of them are very specific to the school. So SAO is the single app online. This is something that was created by Enrollment Management Association. It is one of the ways you can apply to Fountain Valley and a number of other schools across the nation. And it is exactly that, is a single application. So everything is streamlined. If you are going to apply to multiple schools, or you're just comfortable using something like this, you go onto the SAO. And you can do that, and you can just click schools, and you apply to different places. Now, some schools do have specific things you have to do just for them, but then other schools, obviously, it's just exactly the same. Another platform that is used is called Gateway to Preps. This is typically more on the international student side, but we do get some domestic boarding students more than day students who use this platform. And it's called Gateway to Preps. It's the exact same idea. It is a common app. Some people are on SAO, some people are on Gateway. Gateway is an invite only, typically only boarding schools. Fountain Valley is in this and has been for years. So it's just another kind of way that you can do that. A third application option is an internal app. So some schools have, like we do, this year we just launched an internal app. So you can literally apply just through the Fountain Valley system. That is the most efficient way to do it. If that is the school you 100% want, or 90% want, 85% want, whatever it is, that is what schools prefer, is that you go through their proprietary system that gets you into their resource manager, that gets you into all their systems. It does it exactly like they want it. The other systems, the common apps, they have little quirks and tweaks that then the school has to change things around a little bit. And there also might be other ways. Like I said, there might still be somebody out there who's using paper. I don't really know. But there are different ways to apply. So just kind of get familiar with them, kind of choose the one you like best, dabble in them, and always ask the admission office for questions and what their advice is and what they prefer as a school. So for number 4, I'm going to hand it back off.
Awesome. So number 4 is to visit the school. Seems obvious, right? So like Bert was saying, attending and doing school visits and open houses and shadows is a really great way to get an idea of campus culture, student life. It's good to get a vibe check. So I remember the first time when I visited campus and I was blown away by the positive energy among the students and faculty. Everyone was so polite and friendly, and I felt instantly included. And this was a really good data point for me when applying for schools. So I would love to hear Bert's experience first time on campus. Bert also grew up on campus, so he has a very unique perspective. And yeah, parents, tell me, what was your vibe check? What was it like visiting schools and going to campuses?
Let me unmute there. Well, so, the more time you can spend on a private school campus, I think the better off you are. And I think the more people that you talk to, either teachers, other parents, and also opportunities for your children or child to spend time with the actual students of the school in their own environment, the more time you can do that, the better off you are, because of the fact that you're just going to get a variety of input and perspectives about the school and about what makes the school special, and areas that the school might need to improve in, because no place is perfect. But the reality of the day is, I think culture is very important. And for me, from day one, being a part of Fountain Valley's culture and being brought into a family, a really large family, really was a very special experience for me. And it's been a special experience for our children as well. My spouse also attended Fountain Valley School. So we and her daughter also attends the school. So we endorse the school 100%, but we love it and we think it's an amazing place. But I think the more time you can spend with the teachers, the faculty, the students, the parents, and one of the things I like to do is make sure I can spend some time with parents, so parents can ask other parents parental questions, because of the fact that we've experienced the issues. We've experienced things firsthand of what it's like to be a parent. And I think the more parents you talk to for a particular school, the better off you are, because you're going to get a variety of answers and insights.
Well, briefly, my own story of coming to Fountain Valley, I did not follow Alex's advice one bit, which was that I applied over the summer, this summer before I started at Fountain Valley, and there were no students on campus, and one student came to campus to give me a tour. So I kind of made my decision to come to Fountain Valley based purely on place, not so much on people, but it turned out to be a wonderful decision. I was very lucky. And the other thing this makes me think of right now is I have two daughters at Fountain Valley. One is a senior this year, one is a freshman. And so we are very deeply in the college process. So perhaps even more fresh for me is the visits to college campuses and what that experience has been like. And since March, we visited 11 campuses. So we have seen a lot. And it is just amazing how quickly my kiddo gets that vibe check and knows immediately. And, you know, everybody can put beautiful pictures on their website and everybody does. But the feeling of the campus, the surrounding area, the people, the culture, their attitude is just, you just cannot truly know that from a website. So I absolutely agree that visiting is key. The other thing I would say, again, similar to actually what I said last time in terms of letting your kiddo own it, is trying to find a way for you to spend a little time on the campus where your kid is separate from you. Because kids act different when they're around adults and when they're around kids. And so I think it's just so critical for kids to get to spend time with just other kids and see how that feels, because that's who they're really going to spend their time with when they become students at the school.
And there's a lot of opportunity as well to visit campuses. And I know it's a little bit different depending on where you are, where you live, the school you're looking at, if you're a day student, if you're a boarding student, if you're an international student. But, you know, all schools host visits, so you can almost always come for a campus tour at any time of day, whenever you want, and they'll kind of guide you on when you want to do that. You know, depending on where you're looking, you might be able to hit several schools in a day, several schools in a week, or it might be, you know, one in a day, one in a week, something like that. But then after the application process goes through, if your student is accepted, almost all schools, especially boarding schools, host accepted student days, revisit days, whatever they exactly call them. It depends on the school. So, you know, like last year and this year at Fountain Valley, we're going to host accepted student days. So at, you know, early action, sometime in mid-January, we will host an event, probably off campus, that invites a bunch of faculty, a bunch of staff, some of our current students, and all the accepted students. And then in the spring, we'll invite anybody who has accepted early action, as well as anyone who has accepted regular decision, to campus. Last year and this year both, we did 2 days. We did a Friday, Saturday, and there were panels, there were tours, there were meals together, there were group sessions, there was stuff for the kids to do. And, you know, the students who are coming in to just hang out at night, there was stuff for the parents to do where they can kind of hang out and get to know each other. So it was a big time of get that feel, see exactly how you feel about it, see exactly how you fit in, both from a student side and a parent side. And like I said, almost every school does that. So definitely take advantage and know that that's something that's going to be there.
I would
Now,
just chime in on that real quick and just say that day last year made my daughter really excited to come to school, which was so great because as a parent, like, you know, you can only be like, so are you excited? Like so much, you know, before they're like, "Ugh, mom. So I just thought it was a really nice opportunity for my kiddo to get excited kind of on her own without my push.
yeah, that's definitely, we had a lot of people making a lot of friends on those days. I can tell you that right there. So now kind of get into nitty gritty a little bit more. So, you know, we had apply early, we had do campus visits, you know, what's your best advice? Now we're really getting down to it. So preparing for interviews. Every school has interviews. Now, some of them have student interviews, some of them have parent interviews, some have group interviews, some have individual interviews. We do an individual one-on-one interview with one of the admission staff with the student. We've kind of gotten to know the parents and everything in this whole process, so we don't necessarily do that. But you have to be prepared, and the students have to be prepared. So, one of the things about interviews is that both the school and the student have to use the interview to learn about one another. So, from a student perspective, use the interview as an opportunity to connect with the school, ask certain questions that you want to know, always come with questions, because the interview process is a way for the student and for the school to get to know one another. It's a two-way street. This is not one directional, it's not unidirectional. It's always helpful to have that idea going into the interview. So, from a student, from a parent standpoint, do your research. Please do your research. Know what school you're interviewing at. Know a little bit about the school. Know some about the athletics, the clubs, the academics, whatever it is. And, think about how you can prepare for the interview. So for any three of you, for Burton, Allison, or Kira, kind of tell me a little bit about either if your student did or did not prepare for the interview, if they were kind of nervous going into the interview or had full confidence. And Kira, if you want to share some of your best things you've heard at an interview or worst things you've heard at an interview. So whoever wants to field that first, go for it.
I'm not muted, so I can go first. I can tell you right now that nervous excitement was the feeling that the kids experienced when they interviewed at Fountain Valley. There's always concern about, wanting to get in and will they like me and all those things that lots of children and adults have and feel. And one of the things that I reiterated to my daughter was just be yourself and be talkative, right? And those were the kind of the two biggest things, I would say. They just want to get to know who you are, and the way they do that is that you just have conversations with them and you talk with them and you just be yourself. And that's the most important part in an interview process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say that I think I would describe my daughter was a little anxious, and that might be just a general trait of hers, not specific to the interview. So I didn't want to cause her any additional anxiety by saying like, no, make sure you do this and make sure you do that. So I didn't do a lot of what I would call traditionally prep. But yeah, I would say like prep for me was like a long game of over the course of her young childhood, like involving her in adult conversations, asking for her opinion, making sure she was comfortable talking to other adults in her life, answering with good manners when people ask her a question. So I would say my preparation perhaps for her was more like her whole childhood. But when it came down to the actual interview, I didn't try to sort of overly prepare her because I didn't want to increase her anxiety. But I would also say, like, folks who are interviewing at a school, they're accustomed to talking to 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. So, that was my experience as I was like, the little that I could kind of listen in or had my daughter tell me how it went, I felt like I was like, oh, good. They asked her, good questions and followed up with her to help her through that interview. So I guess my flip side of that would say like, you don't need to over stress on it and just know that the folks, I think at least at Fountain Valley School, my experience would be that the adults want your kid to succeed. So don't necessarily go into it with a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, I think that something that's important to me when a prospective student walks into my office for their interview is to remind them that there's no right answer. And it's like Alex was saying, a two-way street. It's a way for us to get to know them. It's also a way for them to get to know us. So I really like to guide an interview mostly just to be a conversation. And the things that I'm looking out for are authenticity and emotion. And I can understand that it's a really intimidating thing to do, especially when this is likely the first interview that most of these students are doing. So yeah, authenticity. And I think that stands out to me. Something that we also really love after giving an interview is a thank you note. That stands out to us for sure. So acknowledgement from the student goes a long way. And that kind of brings us to the next tip, which is assessing fit or match. So like I was saying, just as you are making sure that we are a good match for your student and family, we are doing the same. So we've already touched on several of these points, but of course, through visiting the schools and doing your interview and doing your research, speaking to current parents, former parents, you're able to kind of gather what the school's values, goals, and mission is. And if your child aligns with those things, I think is really an important factor when applying. So it's important to consider factors like school culture, mission statement, academic and athletic programs, energy between faculty and students. And of course, a way to do this is by visiting campus. We've already gone over it, walking the halls, meeting current students, talking to faculty, and observing just daily life is important. I think it's also important if you're considering boarding to take a look at the dorms. I think that they're pretty nice. And it really helps your child envision themselves as part of the community. So some opportunities outside of doing private tours are, of course, open houses, shadow days, and sometimes it takes multiple visits. So a lot of our families come for open houses and then want to come back to meet with specific faculty members, shadow specific classes that their students are particularly interested in. So just some things to consider. And throwing it back to Allison and Burton, what were some things, some important factors that your students were looking out for when applying for schools and considering Fountain Valley?
I can go first this time. First, I actually just had a thought as I was listening to you talking that made me think of an article that I read recently about how organizations, schools in particular, will publish their mission, vision, values, their core words, whatever, on their website. And those are all lovely and beautiful, but an interesting way to think through how those would be lived is thinking about how do those apply in a dilemma. So if the school, COVID, for example, is a dilemma that schools all faced unexpectedly, and how did they pivot during that time? Or thinking of other dilemmas that a school might face, and then asking like, oh, how would you enact your values in that situation? I think that can be an important way to understand the values more than just the pretty words. In terms of the values for my children and what they were looking for and what I was looking for. For me, school, so I guess I will say Fountain Valley School was transformational for me as a young person. And it was all about the adult relationships and the fact that there was all these adults who were just really delighted to be around adolescents, which you don't always hear. And so I was looking for, I wanted that experience for my children. And so I think that would be a value that I would look for in any school. Like, are the faculty and the people that work there and live there delighted to be there and delighted to be with kids? Because it shouldn't be a drudgery, right? This should be fun. And then also for me, for my family, for my children, I was looking for a well-rounded education. I wasn't looking for just purely academic rigor. So my kids were really excited to play sports. They were excited to be in the arts programs, to have an advisor. So I would say that's something that was attractive to both of us.
Yeah, to build on that mission and vision, I think it's really important to, yeah, like Allison said, understand what the school says and then observe and just see if the school is living it in its day-to-day life, right? Because, she said it so well. You can put anything you want on a website, but if you don't actually live by those values and that mission, what good does that do? And just seeing how the people act, and if they are kind of acting in that way, and asking questions of students and parents about those kind of key mission values and goals, and see if they feel like that their children or the children feel like they're actually getting that from the school, and what are some examples of that. I think those are very important things that you can do because of the fact that those missions and values. I would say you really want to start there, just because of the fact that I think one of the first steps in the process as a parent is you have to understand what you want for your child, and make sure that you have that clearly in your head. So when you are actually starting the process, you know what you're looking for. And then assessing whether or not, once you found schools that meet those criteria, are they truly living it when you go and visit the school and have conversations and observe? I think those are very important things. Much like Allison, one of the things that is so exciting about that our children love at Fountain Valley is their opportunity to try things that they would not be able to try in other environments. My children would be going to a very good large public school district in the Denver area, and they wouldn't have a chance to play on most of the sports teams if they hadn't started playing that sport when they were 8. And or to ride a horse if they wanted to try riding a horse, or climb a climbing wall. And so there's a lot of opportunity. Or theater, right? Like, I'm going to do theater. I've decided that theater might be cool. I'm going to try this out for a term and see what theater's like, and explore and have those opportunities to really explore different avenues that you wouldn't get in a lot of different places. So those are kind of the things that I would say about fit.
I would just add maybe one more thing, that I do believe that the educational environment that your kiddo is in is kind of an extension of your family. They become in many ways your family. As a kid, I know that my friends became sort of my chosen family. So you want to make sure that there's a match between your values and the values of the school. And so it's not just, do I think these are beautiful, lofty values, but actually, are they a match with my own values or our family's values?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And from, both parent and student side, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions, ask probing questions, see how people answer, see how multiple people on campus answer, whether it's faculty, staff, head of school, admissions, whatever it is. Really don't be afraid to ask. And it also all goes back to the interview as well for the student. Because, the questions we're asking from an admission standpoint, and, we have 5 standard questions we ask every single candidate. And we're asking those to learn certain things about the student, as well as how they handle themselves, how they do kind of pivoting, how they answer. We're kind of putting that all. The student can do the exact same thing in that interview. If the student comes with good questions, they can learn just as much about you in the school as we can about the student. So think about that as well. From a logistical standpoint, understanding financial aid and scholarship, which can be its entire another webinar and a whole nother thing, which we did do last year. So if you go on our YouTube site for Fountain Valley, there is an entire presentation on financial aid, scholarship, the Clarity app, the whole deal. But, just think about, again, starting early with financial aid, probing into what scholarships are available, if that is a thing you need, if that is a thing you want, if that's something your student just wants to pursue. We have merit scholarships, and then there's financial aid. There's also scholarship organizations out there that are external, but a lot of schools like ours have connections with those and can point people in those directions. But again, the key is to start early, to think about it. This is another thing. It takes a little bit. The actual applying to aid doesn't generally take that long. Usually those are like half-hour apps, and I'll show you in a sec. But the scholarship stuff might have several pieces to it. So like at Fountain Valley, we have two different types of scholarships right now. One is called the Summit Scholarship. It is a merit academic based. That can be for anybody coming in. And then there's one called the Head Scholarship, which has some parameters about where someone has to come from and what they do. But, the Summit Scholarship, obviously you have to apply. You have to apply for aid. You have to do a essay or a video. You have to say you are looking for it. You have to say you're interested in it. Then you get a prompt. Then the student has to conduct something. Then it goes to a scholarship committee. So it's a little bit more legwork, and there's more to it. And again, you have to have a little bit more time to be able to do it. Our Head Scholarship comes with an interview either with the associate or the head of school. So then you have to think about, all right, and again, they have standard questions, but you have to schedule that interview. You have to prep for that interview. They have to be available. So there are these opportunities out there, but a lot of them are a little bit more work. They're also deadline based. So like our early action, to do early action financial aid, you have to be done with your aid application by December 30th. For regular applications, and this is most schools who have a regular, the boarding school world is usually typically the same with a February 1 application deadline. That is also the financial aid deadline. After those deadlines, it might not be there. I mean, the application, you can put it in, but there may not be spots. Aid, you can put it in, but there might not be availability. So the earlier you can get that in, the more information you can put in, and the more time the finance committee, the scholarship committee has to look over these materials. One thing I will also say about financial aid, and again, this could be a whole, 2-hour thing about aid with lots of questions, is that in the aid apps, and a lot of places use third parties like we do. We have, Clarity for Aid. There's the information, but it's also on our website, of course. And one of the most important pieces is to put notes in. People don't always know that. That is super important. Every single aid app you do, you get to put how much you think you can afford, and you get to put notes that give a narrative on why this is the case. And it might be something, this is yearly. It might be something, next year we'll be in a different situation. It might be something, my 97-year-old mother moved in and we have to fully support her. That stuff the aid committee will look at and will talk about, and that makes a big difference. If you put in an aid app and say, I can only pay $7,000 a year with no context, the finance committee is going to look purely at numbers and say, well, here's what your number says, and here's what you say, and there's a big gap between those things. But if you give reasoning and narrative, then the finance committee has a discussion to go forth. So that is super, super important. And talking about
Can I just add one thing about financial aid applications as a parent?
Absolutely.
It feels a little probing to me. They do feel like you have to reveal a lot of personal information. That's why it's good that third parties are used, because it feels a little bit more secure. But I would just say to parents to just recognize that, like, it feels like you have to give everything but a blood sample. Like, it really feels like you have to give a lot of information about yourself, and that can feel a little uncomfortable. So, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have any advice to make that better, because it is what it is, but just like recognizing that you might feel a little icky, and knowing that it's part of the process, and you'll be doing it again for college, and that time they really might want a blood sample. No, I'm just kidding, but that's how it feels. So just know that it does feel quite probing when you fill out those applications.
Well, tip number 8, huge part of the application process is the essay. So this is a great opportunity for students to take ownership of the process through their essay. Crafting a thoughtful essay is a really important component of the application, and it's an opportunity for students to share their voice. It's an opportunity for them to share their voice in a different way outside of the interview and the tour. And we love hearing their unique experiences and aspirations. So often a committee is looking for genuine, thoughtful, curious responses that reveal a student's character and interests. And we really want to see what their motivations are, especially beyond grades and test scores, which can be intimidating, an intimidating part of the process as well. It also can help set a student apart by highlighting how they might contribute to the school's community. And just as a reminder, essays are often looked at by multiple eyes and multiple people in different departments, not just admission. So it's just something to consider when your student is writing their essay. And just a tip, if you want to try to help your student out, proofreading is a great way to help be a part of the process while still letting them own it. And we're definitely looking for proper grammar and things like this. So anything to add, Alex?
No, I mean, now it gets harder than ever, obviously, in the age of AI writing and things like that. You know, I would encourage students to do it on their own. I mean, if you need an AI to give you an idea of what to write, that's okay, but definitely do it on your own. We do actually read all the essays. The admissions office reads them. We have multiple people at the school reading them. Some schools have alums reading them. So we do actually all read them, and it is very important. I would think of it just like you're doing an English paper for school. You know, you got to think about that, and the shorter it is, the less impressed people are. And the more depth, if you give a little bit about yourself, then we learn more about you. Because again, we're crafting this whole idea of who you are as a student, who the family is, how exactly it's going to fit, how we can set the student up for success, how the student is going to be, you know, successful and add to the community, which kind of brings me to the balancing academics too, is that, you know, we're looking at the whole of everything. It's not just about GPAs. It's not just about test scores. It's not just about the essay. It's not just about the interview. It's not just about any of those things. It's an entire picture of the student, of the family. And, you know, schools often say they're crafting a class. So, you know, we like where we are, where we're 70% boarding, we're 30% day, we're 25% international, you know, whatever exactly our numbers look like, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller enrollment wise, but we like to keep that. We're about 50-50, you know, gender wise. We have people who contribute to different teams. We have people who contribute to the arts. We have people who can contribute to the theater program, to broadcasting, to, you know, musical theater and concert and vocal. And we take all of that. So, you know, this side, private schools, boarding schools, college, you don't know what we're looking for. And there's a lot. We get a lot of questions about what's the minimum GPA? We don't have one. What's the minimum score on a test? We don't really have one. For scholarships, what SSAT score does my child need to get? We don't market like that. Some schools might, some colleges might, and say, well, if you don't get this, we throw those out. We don't do that because, again, we're trying to get an entire picture, the student, the family, and what our class looks like and what the whole community at Fountain Valley looks like. So we need people with theater, we need a basketball team, we need a soccer team. Those might all be the same person, but you don't necessarily know that. And when you're applying to the school, you don't know what they're looking for either. So just, again, I think Kira said it before, be authentic, be yourself, show us all the things you do because you don't know what we're looking for. And then we're on tip number 10 and we're just at time. So we're going to keep going. We can't hear you, unfortunately. Oh, you almost made it through the whole thing.
Sorry about that. I'm looking at multiple screens. So tip number 10 is to stay connected with us. We are available to you throughout the application process, from inquiry to when you step on campus. So if you have questions about the application, the essays, booking your tour, preparing for interview, navigating financial aid, merit scholarship, whatever it is, we're available to you. And we hope that you stay connected with us. And yeah, just to reiterate, we really love to see students running the show. It shows us that they care and they're interested in joining our community and they want to be here. So yeah, we love this sign of interest. And of course, another reminder is that this is a two-way street. So like, we are making sure that your student is the right match for us. The responsibility is also on your student and you to do the same. So please send us any questions that you have, and we would love to help you navigate the process.
Yeah, I would reiterate, definitely don't be afraid to ask questions that come to mind later, because that is always what happens, where you go out, you tour a school, you have a great time, you feel like you had a lot of great conversations, and then on the car drive away from the school, suddenly this question pops into your head and you're like, oh, I should have asked that question. Well, don't be afraid to ask questions, and continually to ask questions throughout the process. Everybody's here to answer those questions and help you understand and have the best picture possible.
Yeah, that's something I always tell people after tours, visits, phone calls, emails, whatever. I'm like, 2 seconds later, you think of a question, call me, text me, email our admissions team, email your counselor, text them, call them, whatever. We will absolutely 100% get back to you, or get you to the person who might be a better insight. We're always happy to connect you with faculty, with parents, with whoever. So we have a bonus question. I know we're over time, but I don't care. So anyone who wants to stay on, keep staying. Yay. So bonus question. This is for the parents. What made you or your student, I'll go that either way, but it fit nicely in the box this way, most nervous but shouldn't have about this whole process?
I think the general nature of a teenager is a little bit of insecurity in most teenagers, and wanting to be liked and wanting to fit in, and just worrying about that. And at the end of the day, that turned out to be such a non-issue within, when I first started at the school, and when my kids first started at the school. um, you know, my child is younger than her stepsister, and so she was helping move her in when in the beginning, and a lot of the girls kept coming into the room, and they thought she was going to school at Fountain Valley and starting as well, and they were all excited to meet her and asked her what her name, and just wanted to know all about her and all this kinds of stuff. And that actually really was the tipping point for her about Fountain Valley. When we drove away from Fountain Valley and left Logan on campus, she turned to us and said, "Oh, I want to go to Fountain Valley." And so it was just one of those things that, just worrying about fitting in the right fit, in the right culture. And if you've done a good job, both student and parent, figuring all that stuff out, that really shouldn't be as much of a concern if it is a good fit.
I think I would say that a worry that has been alleviated with both of my children is that I think they worried and I worried a little bit, like, can they do it? Can they do it academically? Can they do the stamina of the long day? Because it's a long day, it's a long day of being with your peers and then having an activity in the afternoon. And I just feel that what is so lovely about Fountain Valley is that the faculty have the space and the time to really get to know their students. And that is why many of us bring our children to private schools, to bring them into a smaller environment where they will be seen and be known, and have their needs met. And so that is, I feel that both of my children, they're very different, very, very different. I always say my kids came from different planets, and they seem to be also headed towards different planets, but their needs were really met academically, and they could do it. They were prepared. And in one, for my older daughter, she had always been like, she had kind of skated by, and Fountain Valley finally challenged her. And I was so grateful as a parent. And then for my younger one, she kind of showed up and was like, oh, I can do this. And that was a really delightful thing, because she, like I said, is a bit more of an anxious kiddo. So yeah, I worried if they could do it. And, I think these are our babies, right? And so you always worry over your baby, but I'm just delighted that they've both been really successful. And I attribute that to the fact that faculty take the time and the effort to get to know them and meet their needs.
Great. Thanks so much. Really appreciate the insights of the panel here. Thanks everybody for attending. Thank you to all the outside people who attended. And, I hope we continue this conversation and can help you more in the future. I also hope that you learn something a little bit from here. Again, this is one of those, we could probably do a weekly session on applying to and all of that kind of stuff. So please feel free, reach out to us at any time. Our next webinar, I know it's not on here, is December 5th, which is not very far away. And it is all about community life. It's Community Life 101. It is what to expect when you actually get to the institution. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening, morning. We have people from all over the world on this right now. So whatever time it is, have a good rest of that time. Thanks so much, everybody.